This is Sports Talk with Steve Jones, a Seven Mountains Media production, your daily talk show, the voice of Penn State football and men's basketball, featuring interviews with special guests. Now here's your host, Mr. Steve Jones.
Well, great to be with you, Kyle. It's good to see you Saturday.
Yes,
up in
sir.
the booth. I know you had to miss yesterday. Jason was in, and Jason put together really a spectacular performance. Now, I base this on a curve, but
would some call it the Iowa curve? It was on par with Iowa's performance Saturday, around there.
I don't want to get into that. No, it's just not good. Look, so now you get ready for Northwestern. I did take a long look at the Northwestern tape. It's not like they don't have players. They do. I thought the Pate kid, the defensive end, 41, played really well against Minnesota. Kenny Soares, he's the guy that put the pressure on Calic Manis in overtime that forced the overthrow when they were going to score a touchdown. Of course, Gallagher. Of course, everybody knows how much I like Gallagher. It's Andrew Mueller, the other linebacker. Two linebackers are good. And I think Hurd in the secondary is really good, too. Although Theron Johnson got hurt in overtime, and he kind of limped off. Bryant, to his credit, played very well in the game. He did not have a 200-yard passing game. Threw for 396. And Minnesota helped out a lot because I'll give you an example. Minnesota's trying to kill the clock, and they're killing the clock. Mm-hmm. So then they don't convert on third down, and so they have a 4th and 3. So they deliberately take a delay game penalty. Not a delay game penalty. Deliberately one of their guys runs offside, and Northwestern declines the penalty. Crawford, the punter for Minnesota, now this is with about a little more than a minute to go, cannot punt a better ball. I mean, I'm talking brilliant. Ball hits at about the 6-7 yard line. It takes 2 big hops. And Redding is waiting for the ball, except he's standing 3 yards in the end zone. He completely... and the center who snapped it is downfield, and he looks at him at the 10 with his arms like, what are you doing? So instead of starting at the 2, they started at the 20.
Yeah.
They handed him 18 yards.
Yeah.
And remember, they scored on the last play of the game.
18 yards is a big difference. It's a difference anyway.
Right. Now, they say you're backed up in your own end zone. You can't, you have to do something quick. You can't really drop back and do anything with it. And you just sit back and you have to be kidding me. Then they rushed 3 a lot. Gordon got away with one. He needed a first down, the tight end. They threw to the outside. He's got it, but he cuts inside and then dove to the sideline. Well, his knee came down in bounds, and they should have kept the clock running, and they didn't. They ruled he was out of bounds. I said, no, he's not out of bounds. I mean, now he landed out of bounds, but his knee hit inbounds by about a yard and a half. Or by about a foot and a half, I mean. Okay. One touchdown that Northwestern got, one drive was easy. Bryce Kurtz had 215 yards receiving. He hit Kurtz on a couple of big plays in that drive, and they just bang, bang, bang down the field. And it was fast. That, to me, was the key drive because they ate up no clock, got a score, and all of a sudden you're looking around like, wow, that was fast. And because of the speed of that drive, it gave them time at the end of the game. That David Braun, their coach, managed the end of the game really well. How he used his timeouts, good. And because it's okay to use a couple of your timeouts before 2 minutes. This is the same philosophy we talk about in basketball, right? Call your timeouts before a minute to go. Why? Because the clock stops on any made basket or a foul in the final minute.
It's pretty straightforward.
Right? So that's why you want to use your timeouts in basketball before a minute to go in the game. Because In the last minute, everything stops on a foul or a made basket. Okay.
It's not rocket science.
All right. Well, no, but TV makes it out of it. You got to keep your timeouts to the end. Okay, the game's changed. They got this 1 minute thing now, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's the same thing now with this. Because the clock does stop on first downs, there pauses. Because it pauses on first downs, even in the field of play. All right? And the clock stops when you go out of bounds. Because right now the clock doesn't stop when you go out of bounds. It stops when you go out of bounds in the final 2 minutes. You can use a couple of your timeouts. Now, they had already used one earlier, so they only had 2 left anyway. But say you have 3 timeouts. You can use a couple timeouts before the 2 minute mark. Same philosophy, because you have some built-in pauses or stoppages in the final 2 minutes that are not there in the first 58 minutes, except for the end of the first half. So, but that aren't available in 56 of the first 58 minutes of the game. And they used their timeouts, and they did a good job with it. And defensively, when they needed to make a stop, they did. And they were just on the touchdown play. There was only one play. They didn't run 2 plays. Northwestern. He rolled right, threw back, tight end Mangieri's there, touchdown.
It was a good play call, and we saw it together. I was in the booth with you when that happened. Yeah. It's beautiful.
Holy cow! It's like, all right, it was a good play call.
Yeah.
It gives them something to. That's a big boost for them. You're down 21 points. Mm-hmm. Now, the drive to get them to 17 started in the third quarter. So they started establishing stuff in the third quarter. And this is not a case where they got all these takeaways and changed the game. There were no takeaways.
Just played good football.
There were no takeaways. I also... For P.J. Fleck, I know Williams, who had been out 2 weeks, was finally back in the lineup. But the Taylor kid has been doing great. He gets down to the goal line in overtime, and he did this at the goal line on a previous series, too. Took him out and brought Williams in. Over here in the back, why? He did that, too, on another series where it's like it was third down. They brought him in, and it was third down and short. And why?
PJ Fleck was this guy who, for I'd say the past 5-ish years, was so highly rated just because of things that he was doing with this program. And it got to the point where it was could he be similar to what Matt Rule did and go to the NFL? Could that he was being discussed as an NFL coach.
There is no way in heck he could be an NFL coach.
No, there is not.
And the reason I say that is not because I'm trying to insult him. That is not. You have to understand what I'm about to say. Certain people are made to be college coaches by their style and how they go about it, and some people are made to be pro coaches by their style and how they approach it. His style and the enthusiasm and the rah-rah and everything like that doesn't work on the pro level. Okay? It works on the college level. Right? It doesn't work on the pro. The pros be looking at it what are you doing?
It's the exact same thing that happened with Urban Meyer, except different styles, but the similar.
Yeah, he's not a rah guy.
But the similar vibe of this doesn't work with pros.
Right. It just doesn't. Some guys remember Pete Carroll.
Mm-hmm.
When Pete Carroll went to Seattle, it's all those years at USC, people forget he was the head coach of the Jets and the Patriots before that. He already understood, quote, at least how the pros worked.
It worked.
I'll give you now, I know this is way back, so it's a different era. All right, it's a different era, but let's talk about Chuck Noll for a moment. We always see in the movies the rah-rah speech before you go out there, and I think, I want to say ESPN showed our old friend Charles Huff gave a 30-second speech to his team before they took the field at Virginia Tech.
Mm-hmm.
Which was, and he did it really 20 to 30 seconds, and it was in the tunnel when he said it to him. Okay. And it was okay. All right. But people will see the movie, In the movie, it's, go, 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 rah, 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 fight, 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 and everybody goes nuts and insane. He is, right? Well, you run out of the tunnel, and you're all like, here we go, right? Okay, and then you get out there, and the place goes crazy. And then they have to toss the coin. They have to take a commercial break. Then they got to clear everybody off the field. And then, well, about 10 minutes after you run through the tunnel, after that emotional speech, you kick off.
Yeah.
And then in the first play of the game, guess what happens?
Touchback.
You get belted. You get hit.
Mm-hmm.
As Mike Tyson says, everybody has a play until they're hit. Okay. Well, you got to just go through and just get going. So Chuck Noll, you want to know what his pregame speech was to his team? And obviously I have an outstanding source on this.
I wonder who your source could be.
Yeah. He said he'd get up there and he goes, all right, guys, it's 12:52. We got to be in the tunnel at 12:55. The national anthem's at 1. That's what he did.
Smart.
So one day they're playing the Oilers, and Houston at halftime is just having their way with the Steelers. He was down the Astrodome, and one of the rookies, this is halftime, gets up, and Jack didn't say which rookie it was. One of the rookies gets up and he says, "This is a disgrace. This is Barry. We gotta play better than." And Noel comes in. He goes, "Sit down and shut up." Right? Takes the blackboard. It wasn't a whiteboard back then. It was a blackboard or a green board. Comes out. He goes, "All right, these are the adjustments we're going to make for the second half. We're going to do this on defense." Drew it up real fast. He says, "We've got to take that away from them. That's hurting us, so we're going to make this adjustment here. Offensively, we need to make 2 adjustments." And he drew up 2 of them. He goes, "We're going to do this and this and this." The Steelers came back and won the game. But, like...
You don't need rah, 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 let's go to win every game. You just need...
You need to go out and execute.
Yeah.
It's amazing what execution means.
So many people are like, I need the coach who gets loud and like invokes anger and frustration and makes me like want to run through a brick wall. Does Bill Belichick ever get loud? I don't think his voice has ever exceeded like 2 octaves. He sits like -2 decibels and that's it. He's just like, I'm Bill Belichick, and never exceeds this level ever in his life.
No, I mean...
It works.
So now back to the college coach versus pro coach. PJ Fleck is an emotional guy. They recruit players who like that approach, which is fine, right? And okay, but it would never translate to the pro level. It just wouldn't. That's why you look in the NFL, the vast majority of guys, right? Now, at some point in their careers, they coached in college because you have to work your way up through the profession. But for the most part, they cut their teeth in the NFL. You can look at that all the way across the board. It doesn't really matter. I mean, who it is, and you go from there. And it's very rare where you see, because you've heard Lincoln Riley's name brought up a lot.
Yeah.
When it comes to the NFL, Saban did 2 years. Now I want to be fair about what Saban did with Miami. He was only there 2 years. The 1 year they were 9-7. So I've heard people say it was a failure. To me, if he was a 500 guy or below 500 over a 4-year span, 2 years is not enough to say that. But he figured out right away.
It wasn't for him.
This is where I need to be. Yeah, because you're dealing with. Yeah, I remember talking with Bill O'Brien about this, and this is something I brought up many times. But so this is not out of turn here. But he was asked several times by fans, whether it was at the quarterback club or on the talk show, about the difference between coaching college players and pro players. And he said, "Hey, look, you go and you look at pro players." He said, "They're husbands. Some of them are fathers. The day's done. They go home to their wife, the children, whatever. He says, especially, the real veterans in the group. All right. And he said, you're talking to men. Right? I mean, homeowners, and when you're in college, he says, you're talking to 18 to 22-year-olds who still have their professional lives in front of them. He said, so it's different, right? It's different. So he says, you do have to remember that when you're talking to them, especially, and instead of going through a 12-hour day with like 8 hours of meetings, you've got them for 20 hours a week. So there are differences. That's why, this guy could be a pro coach. Well, maybe. I don't know. Steve Sarkisian was the offensive coordinator for the Falcons one year, and then he got out. He got back into the college game. Now, you figure out who you are. James Franklin coached 1 year with the Green Bay Packers. He knows. Now, could James coach in the NFL? Yeah, James could coach in the NFL. He's got that personality to do it. But I think this is the level he likes more than anything else. Mike Rhodes and I had a long talk yesterday after practice. Yes, it is basketball season.
Basketball's back, baby.
And we were talking about just trading various stories back and forth, and Mike's wife Jody was there too, and just trading stories about experiences with players over the years and how important Mike has felt that it's not just the basketball part, it's the personal part. What can you do to put guys in the right path? Guys that had struggles in their lives until they get. He says everybody's got different backgrounds. Some only have a mom. Some only have a grandmother. Some come from two parent homes. Some come from a suburban or affluent background. Some come from a background you go, oh my goodness, how'd they get out? Because you run into it's just a cross section across the board, and you're there to be a basketball coach or a football coach. But you're also there to be an educator, and you're also there to provide the tough love, which in turn people forget about the second part. That's the love part. Right? I'm going to deliver tough love when you need tough love, but in the end, I've always got your back. And that's, and Mike and I talked about that yesterday, and James is the same way. And you have to be that at this level, as opposed to on the pro level. Well, unfortunately, we use the words, and I'm the one that uses the phrase all the time. Pro coaches or general managers talking about the shelf life of a player. Right? The Seattle Seahawks dealt Russell Wilson because they saw the decline happening before their eyes, and they thought this was the time to make the move. Okay. The Texans were thinking the same thing with Watson, and then all the off-the-field stuff. I'm like, we gotta get rid of this guy. Okay?
They're feeling good about themselves right now.
Well, exactly. C.J. Stroud just picked him up a big win, and he played really well in doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? But, for example, Darrelle Revis, he comes in, plays for the Patriots for 1-2 years, then they're like, okay, because again, there's more of a cutthroat attitude in the NFL, and the Bill Walsh story, which I've told 50 times, but it's always bears repeating. When Randy Cross went in for his contract renewal, Bill Walsh looked at him. He said, "You have 5 more years left in the league, but only 2 really good ones. I only want the 2 really good ones." That's the pros.
Mm-hmm.
Now in college, okay, it's if when done right, it's the tough love part. Look, go to class, get your degree, be disciplined on the field, be a leader, be a teammate. You're trying to instill this in them all the time. And then when there is something, you're not cutthroat about it. There's still, it's tough love. There's still the love part of it.
Mm-hmm.
That's why all these players come back all the time for games. I mean, You don't see NFL players going, hey, I can't wait to go to the Dolphins game this week. Hey, great. Right? No. I mean, I know O.J. McDuffie has a lot of loyalty to the Dolphins. I mean, no, he does. O.J. does. All right? I mean, some guys are like that. But why do you see when the first availability, college guys coming back to the campus all the time?
Who was back this week? McSorley was here. Grant Haley.
Trace did not make it in. And Trace did not make it in. I saw Grant at the golf course, he and Tommy Pancoast on Friday, and Trace got a call from an NFL team, so he went to interview with the NFL team, which is what he should do. But Grant was the honorary captain. But he was
former Saints great.
Right, a long list of guys that, again, were back. You know, in the first chance that Saquon Barkley and Micah Parsons, they were back on the weekend because the Cowboys, the Giants, the NFL guys weren't playing. When these guys have bye weeks, they come back here. Hey, Pat Fryermuth comes by and, and waves at Jack and me on the way into the stadium, because the Steelers weren't playing for the West Virginia game. And that's the way it is with college. And that's the big difference between college and pros along the way. I mean, unless they're either on the coaching staff, in the front office, or happen to be the analyst on the radio network, right? How many former Philadelphia Eagles are standing on the sideline during the game? Right?
Maybe one if they're being honored.
Right. Right. If they're being honored, yeah. But, because along the way, teams get rid of you. Right? Like, I really have fond feelings for this program that let me go.
The only ones you ever see come back are like the legends, the icons. So like that's about the limit of it. That's the extent of it. You see for the Jets, maybe Joe Namath shows up for a game here or there. Like that's about what you get. Is the top of the top comes back, but you don't see the third string linebacker return after being there for 4 years. He doesn't come back.
I mean, I've been down at Alabama, and you look down at a couple booths down. There is Joe Namath. You see him there. Like, okay, it's not like I've gone to Notre Dame and to lay Paul Hornung. You look over, there's Paul Hornung there. And I remember riding up the elevator at Texas in 1989 down in Austin, and the guy that got on there, it was just two people in the elevator. The other person was Earl Campbell.
Not bad.
But I'm saying, though, this is like, my point is not I rode up the elevator.
But it's the people come back.
But that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that I knew he was there. He was the guy in the elevator with me, but he came back to be there. Right? So I will tell you one quick Earl Campbell story.
Oh, boy.
Hold up. They play in the Pro Bowl. Now, this is when they actually played football in the Pro Bowl. Like they actually played football.
They didn't just play flag football a little bit.
Right. So for however it was determined, the two running backs for the Pro Bowl this one year were Franco Harris and Earl Campbell. And because Houston had lost the AFC Championship game, remember they played the Pro Bowl after the Super Bowl. So, because Houston had lost the AFC Championship game, Bum Phillips was the coach of the AFC team. So he has a backfield of Franco and Earl Campbell. And they're lining up in the eye. And, of course, Bum has his guy. Earl Campbell is the tailback. All the Steelers walked up to him and they wished him the best of luck in the game. They said because Franco wasn't going to throw a single block for him. They said, it's not really his deal.
Oh boy. I have, speaking of legends who were mentioned earlier, have you seen Joe Namath's comments on Zach Wilson?
I know he said something, but I did not read them.
He said he didn't take anything positive out of Zach Wilson playing. It was awful. He should not play. You should get rid of him. He said, I wouldn't have kept Zach Wilson. I've seen enough of him. I feel bad at this point for Zach. There's nothing he could do.
Well, okay. Let's start with this. Anybody who is a regular listener to the show knows that when the draft came up, I said the Jets should not draft Zach Wilson. I said, in my opinion, I don't even think he's a first-round pick. I said, if you're grading the top 1 through 32 players, he's not one of the 32 players. I said, the only reason he's being highly thought of is because he is a quarterback. Quarterbacks jump the line on the 1 through 32 ranking in the NFL. Now, admittedly, I said that Justin Fields should be the guy taking you there. Fields obviously has not done well with the Bears. Okay. And again, I try to be straight with everybody when I'm doing this. In other words, that's what I said. I own what I said. Right? So it's not one of those like, hey, because that way, if I'm not correcting something I said from before or commenting on something I said before that didn't turn out right, that means the stuff that I talked about, which is, I think, a pretty good list, I have been right about. Okay? But it's okay to sit there and say, you know what? I mean, there was no good choice there.
No, there was not.
Trying to think, was Tua part in that group? And Herbert?
I believe he was.
I remember I was big on Herbert, and T. Frank was not.
No, that was not that draft. That was a different draft.
Okay.
So this was the draft with Trevor Lawrence going first, Wilson second, Trey Lance third. Notably, I don't believe either of those two picks has worked.
Right.
Lawrence has been good.
And I said, if you're going to pick a quarterback, pick Fields, because Lance I had no use for. I sat there and looked. I said, "What are we doing here?" I said, "He's played one game in 2 years."
Yeah, it was quarterback-wise in the orders real quick. It was Lawrence, Wilson, Lance. Then you move down. You have Mr. Justin Fields. Then Mac Jones went 15th overall to the Patriots. So that was kind of where you were quarterback-wise.
Right. And my thought was going into the draft that Lance I would not have picked. That made no sense. Zach Wilson made no sense to me. I mean, it's a COVID year. I mean, what got me was they played Coastal Carolina. Hey, Coastal Carolina. It's still Coastal Carolina. Okay?
Played one game.
Okay? You didn't win the game.
Yeah.
Okay? And I was like, I don't get it. I mean, to me, if you're going to go quarterback, I know you have to do it in the first round. I understand that. But the reality is, I thought he was like a third-round pick.
Well, the other guys to go in that draft, by the way, if you didn't remember, Kyle Trask went the end of the second round to the Bucks. Yeah. Kellen Mond went to the Vikings. Yeah. Davis Mills went to the Texans.
Right.
Like, there wasn't... We always, as you said, the quarterbacks get this like bump because of being quarterbacks, right? That it's like, oh, your profile automatically gets bigger and better.
Right.
But there's so many that just aren't, of course, situation matters, all of this matters, but it's just like, what are you doing? Like the Saints took Ian Book in the 4th round. I was like, that's a fun one. It's a flyer on a guy who like, maybe he works, maybe he doesn't.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
look back at that Trey Lance trade. Look how ridiculous that was.
Sure it was.
Everyone was like, oh, he's going to be like Josh Allen, who played at Wyoming. Similar type of thing, maybe. No. And he, of course, didn't get a fair shake in San Fran. He didn't really get a chance to play. But it's just ridiculous.
No, it is ridiculous. And I sit there and I'm like, and again, I understand that if you need a quarterback, you need to take a flyer on one. And I said back then, I said I would take Justin Fields number 2. To me, he's the second best quarterback in this draft. You know, I felt Mac Jones was the 3rd best quarterback in the draft. I said, and after that, there was nobody else worth taking. Okay, now Zach Wilson can't help where he's picked. He can't help that because where he's picked then takes the pressure and ratchets up the pressure to a level,
an nth degree,
right? That especially in the New York area, maybe playing New Jersey. So in the New York area, it goes to another level. And playing that position, and this, I mean, under this category, can we give credit where credit is due to Josh Dobbs.
Yeah,
Josh Dobbs,
Arizona QB.
He's a career backup. I mean, it's not like he's a rocket scientist. Oh wait, he is. You know what his degree is, right? Aeronautical engineering.
Yeah,
I mean, and like I'm talking, like
dude's smart.
Like he's a 4.0 guy. Like the kind of guy you really don't want to interview in the post-game show.
No, because he'll outthink every single person.
Like, oh, God, this guy's way smarter than me. Okay. But you know what? He's gone out and he's done a good job. Now, he's a great quarterback? No. But you know what? He loves the game so much he keeps hanging in there and keeping his career alive. And look, he got a nice win the other day. So let's give him credit. But in this league, you have to have one of those. You have to have one of the dudes to play in this league. And I'm not sure if Kenny Pickett's one of those guys. I don't know. I think the Saints were dramatically hurt when Derek Carr got hurt.
Oh, it was we lost Derek Carr. Of course, we have no Alvin Kamara. O-lineman Cesar Ruiz went down. Like, we lost players left, right, and center, and it was one of those days. And then when Carr went out was when the wheels fell off the bus. The bus could not have the wheels go round and round anymore. And I love Jameis. He's great.
Yeah.
But Carr is a better quarterback than him.
Jameis is a 15 to 32 quarterback. Right? Carr is somewhere, it may be the back end of it, but he's in that 10 to 15 range.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, but we mentioned that 2021 draft and people missing on their quarterbacks. I want to take a look back real quick at the 2020 draft, just to go through the quarterbacks, the first 2 rounds. I want to know, do you think anybody missed quarterback wise? Joe Burrow, first to the Bengals.
Yep.
It's a hit. Tua Tagovailoa, 5th to the Dolphins. I'd say that's worked out it's working out.
It's more than worked out. And again, Mike McDaniel was here for Pro Day. So I actually got a chance to talk to Mike, and I probably talked to him for like 10, 15 minutes. And we talked about Tua and and everything that he felt he was capable of doing based on how he wants to call a game. 70 points is a big number.
Yeah. I'd say it's worked. The guy taken after him, I remember this whole debate happening of who's going 5th overall to the Dolphins, who's going 6th. Justin Herbert to the Chargers. Again, I think that's worked out pretty well. I mean, he is one of the best quarterbacks in the league. He's got a nice, shiny new contract on him.
Yeah.
Worked out pretty well.
Yeah.
The interesting one is 26th was Jordan Love.
Yeah.
He's played pretty well this season.
Look, I will give the Packers credit because I criticized the pick of Jordan Love at the time. I watched him at Utah State. I was like, I'm like, okay, what are we doing here? Now it's the back end of the first round where you're like, okay, I had to pick the wide receiver to help out.
Aaron Rodgers.
But again, I've got to go back to see who was available at the time. But I remember it was a real surprise when they picked him, and I thought it didn't make sense. Now I'm watching him after sitting there like Rodgers did behind Favre for a period of time, and Jordan Love looks like he knows how to play.
He does. And the last quarterback taken, by the way, in the first 2 rounds of the drafts was the 2nd round, 53rd overall pick by the Philadelphia Eagles, Jalen Hurts. Right. So I think those picks have all worked out first 2 rounds wise, quarterbacks.
And I did not think Jalen Hurts would be a pro quarterback.
But you see, if a player ends up in the right situation with the right coach, the right fit, if it all works like these 5 have, it's great. It's awesome. But when you are taken like Trey Lance was, where he's taken to be this guy who they thought would be the step up from Jimmy G, but he doesn't play ahead of Jimmy G. And then he sits there. And then he gets one chance here or there, but they still don't go to him because something's wrong. We still don't know what fully happened with Trey Lance. And now he's back up to Dak Prescott in Dallas, which is a good spot to be in. But it's not where people thought Trey Lance would be. People said he'd be the greatest thing since sliced bread.
Well, okay, so I don't think it's a coincidence that Carson Wentz and Trey Lance both come out of North Dakota State, and it's been a struggle for them. You were playing at the beast of FCS. Okay. Has been a dominant program for a long time. but you're still going up against FCS corners, FCS defensive lines, and I know everything's relative, but that's the way it is. Now let's take Justin Fields, Mac Jones, and Tua Tagovailoa. So let's take them for a moment. Or Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts was playing quarterback against Georgia. Jalen Hurts was playing quarterback in the Big 12 with Oklahoma against the likes of Texas and others like that. All right. Mac Jones was playing at Alabama against Auburn, LSU, Georgia. You're playing against big-time FBS athletes that have great speeds. Not the NFL, but at least I think it gives you a better read on a guy. Now, it doesn't mean you can't go to Wyoming and go to the Buffalo Bills. You can. As I've pointed out before, I saw Josh Allen play in person at Wyoming. It turned out I was making a speech one night at Eastern Michigan to the Penn State Club of Michigan, and they had it in the Convocation Center. When the speech was over with, I went out and watched the game, watched him play. And you look at these guys, and I realize they come from, there's no cradle of quarterbacks. Right? Daniel Jones is from Duke. Jalen Hurts is Oklahoma. By way of Alabama. Sam Howell is out of North Carolina. All right? You know, Dak Prescott out of Mississippi State. Jordan Love is out of Utah State. Ohio State is Justin Fields. I mean, you go through the list here.
Tennessee.
Jared Goff is Cal.
Yeah. Peyton Manning, Tennessee. Drew Brees, Purdue.
Right. There's no cradle of quarterbacks out there. You sit there and go, boy, you get one of those quarterbacks, you've got it made. I mean, look, Bo Nix was at Auburn, really struggled at Auburn, has flourished out at Oregon because I think he needed to get out as a legacy. He needed to get out of there, right? He just has handled it better at Oregon, and a lot of things fit. Remember, the guy that was the quarterback coach, he's not this year. We had Jerry Allen on the play-by-play voice of Oregon. And Jerry pointed out, I asked about the change in coordinators, but that's what got Bo out there was that connection. Okay, but you keep going across the board. Geno Smith's West Virginia, Josh Dobbs is Tennessee. I mean, he's temporarily the starting quarterback.
Josh Allen, Wyoming.
It's just there's no, Mac Jones, Alabama, Josh Allen. Okay, Zach Wilson's BYU. Before that was Aaron Rodgers from Cal. Tua's from Alabama. Right? Kenny Pickett's from Pitt. Joe Burrow is from LSU by way of Ohio State. Right? Deshaun Watson's out of Clemson. Right? This, Lamar Jackson is Louisville. You're not hearing common threads here.
There's a couple places that have maybe two quarterbacks in the NFL in total at a given time. Doesn't happen often. You see one place do what Alabama did, where it was like Tua, Mac Jones, and Jalen Hurts in the same quarterback room. That doesn't happen often. And again, one of them left, and then the other two have been great. So that doesn't happen where you see those three at like a certain location at any given time. Like look at Clemson. There was this discussion when Trevor Lawrence was there of behind him is DJ Uiagalelei. Everyone's like, he's going to be the next best thing. He's going to be great. He's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
And he's now at Oregon State.
Yeah.
And then, what is it? Kale Klubnik, who is their quarterback?
Yeah, Cade Klubnik.
Klubnik. Sorry, names.
It's all right. It's no big deal.
He's okay, but they also were like, oh, he's the next greatest thing. They're all going to be in the NFL together. And that's just not how it's panning out. There's no set path for a quarterback to go.
No.
And sometimes you get these rooms where it's like these five guys on a team together are insane. So there's this whole wide receiver you or cornerback you or whatever. It's not often that happens. And quarterbacks, it never does.
No, it's all over the map. And Bill O'Brien, I'll reference him again. He said, Steve, the jump from high school to college is a gigantic one. He says the jump from college to the pros is a chasm. It's the way it is. And sometimes you just don't know who translates. Right? Kerry Collins translated very nicely into a 16-year career in the NFL after having a great career here at Penn State. Right? Took Kerry a little while to get going. Okay, took Kerry a little while to get going, but and I'm talking about like here,
Mm-hmm.
Like, because he started as a sophomore. By the time he got to the last half of his junior year, he was really good. And then his senior year, he was great. But it takes a lot. I mean,
Mr. Irrelevant, Brock Purdy.
4 years at Iowa State. And this I'm glad you brought that up. And this will go back to something we've talked about before. But what do a lot of these guys that we're talking about, Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, what didn't they have? A lot of tape.
Game time.
There was not a lot of Trey Lance tape. There was not a lot of Zach Wilson tape. But boy, there's a lot of Brock Purdy tape, which means you see all the great moments and you see a lot of the mediocre moments. Up and down, up and down, up and down, because you're out there every game for 4 years. Instead of, Mitchell Trubisky wowed everybody for a year at North Carolina. Wow, look at how he moves, look how he throws. And Jack Ham and I have talked about this over the years, about the ability to have limited tape to wow the masses. Well, Justin Fields had a lot of tape. Trevor Lawrence had a ton of tape. Okay, Lawrence went first. Fields was the fourth quarterback picked. The two guys in the middle had the limited tape because they see this spark.
They see the one weird, tiny
something.
Intangible.
Right?
They're like, oh, he can make this crazy pass like Zach Wilson at his pro day, I think, where he was rolling out to his left and he threw it across his body 70 yards. And guys are like, oh my gosh, he's going to be the next Peyton Manning. Right. And it's like, that's a singular highlight.
It is.
It's a high. It's not a low.
It's amazing. Now, there's a lot of tape on Lawrence. There's no getting around it. But Brock Purdy had miles and miles of tape.
He had 4 years of tape.
Right? Which means you saw, all the warts and you saw all the positives. All of them. Because he was out there all the time. You saw him struggle in games against West Virginia. You saw him flourish against Oklahoma. Okay. Right? And then you've got other guys where it's just, you've got this little window. Little bit of window. And you sit there and go, okay. And Josh Allen played a lot at Wyoming.
Mm-hmm.
Tua played a lot at Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Pros and cons, but Tua doesn't move well. How did Tua hurt his hip? Tua hurt his hip because he could not get around to the edge, right? And got decked by the Texas A&M kid.
Mm-hmm.
Hard play, right? And he's had to overcome that. Right? Jalen Hurts is a guy that had a lot of tape on him.
You know who had a lot of tape on him because he played 2.5 years in college? Patrick Mahomes. 2.5 years of playing as a starting quarterback. He had a lot of tape, and the Chiefs said, we like that.
Brett Veach went down because we've had Brett on the show. And Brett went down to Lubbock. They're going to look at somebody else. And it comes back from practice and says, you won't believe, the quarterback's unbelievable. Now, he also told me that because Mahomes played in the Big 12, he said Saturdays, I'd go up to Iowa State, I'd watch him play. I'd go over, right, to Kansas, watched him play. I'd go over to Kansas State, I'd watch him play. He said he play Oklahoma, I'd go watch him play. I mean, they had him so thoroughly scouted. And they're looking around saying, because I think the rap was, he's a system guy. He said, but we watched him for 2 years. He said, after we went to practice, he said, we watched him for 2 years. We couldn't wait for this guy to come out.
That's why I'm still heartbroken that the Chiefs traded up just before the Saints did and took him. Yeah. It's been discussed heavily that he was going to be a Saint. But that's okay. We took, I believe, Marshawn Lattimore after him, so I'm okay with that.
Hey, Justin Herbert, there's a lot of tape.
Mm-hmm.
So you saw the Rose Bowl against Wisconsin. Oregon wins the game. They win the game because he ran. He didn't throw the ball well at all in that game. He did not throw the ball well in that game. It was his feet that made a big difference in helping Oregon win the Rose Bowl. Like, okay. But he didn't throw the ball well. All right. It's just some guys, again, you see all the negative plays to go with all the positive ones.
Mm-hmm.
So your evaluation on a Mac Jones, on a Patrick Mahomes, on a Justin Herbert, on a Jalen Hurts is exponentially more thorough because you see all the good with the bad, as opposed to I've got a few games here. Wow, whoa, whoa, hey,
We played Coastal Carolina for one game this season, and I had 3 touchdowns, 250 yards, whatever it is.
Good for me.
Yeah.
Right.
Gosh, I torched South Dakota State, Steve. I did it. One game, torched them.
I don't know. It's not easy being, and you know what? The Ravens are interesting in this regard. John Harbaugh decided that, in one of those hey, let's self-scout us. He said, you know what? He says, we're too disconnected with our scouts.
Mm-hmm.
So they bring them in and talk to them, or he's talking to them on Zoom calls every week just to talk to them instead of having them out and about doing whatever, and they send in reports and they never really, it's like, and maybe on draft night or, leading up to the draft, they'll try and sell you on somebody.
Mm-hmm.
They've decided to be more, he said, I need to be more connected with the scouts. They need to know what I'm thinking and why I'm thinking it. And conversely, I need to know what they're thinking and what they're seeing when they go out to practices. And a lot of scouts are disconnected from the organizations. And sometimes you wonder if that disconnect leads to, hey, we finally are, we finally take Coach X and sends him out to go to a pro day. Wow. I mean, pro days don't mean much. I mean, I'll give you 2 quarterbacks who had terrible pro days. Lamar Jackson had a terrible pro day.
Mm-hmm.
Lamar Jackson is, by, I think, every metric, is a success in the National Football League.
I believe he has 3 letters next to his name. I believe they're MVP somewhere around
And the other guy had a terrible pro day, was Peyton Manning.
Mm-hmm. Notably, pretty good quarterback, I think, by whatever metrics you want to use. Pretty decent at his job.
Yeah. Right. Because it's a day.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've been out there on that field where I've seen guys on their pro day. Whoa, wow.
Zach Wilson throwing across his body 70 yards, like the greatest thing ever that's ever happened in the world.
And guess what he doesn't have out there with him?
The space.
He doesn't have anybody rushing. When you're on pro day, okay, you're out there in shorts and a T-shirt throwing to other receivers, and you're on the route tree and everything like that. There's nobody in your face.
There's cameras, Steve. What are you talking about?
I mean, now you get people in your face. You're like, ay.
Mm-hmm.
And it becomes, you get happy feet. You're not set. The game goes really fast. The Sam Darnold quote from the sideline, I feel like I'm seeing ghosts.
That might be one of the greatest quotes of all time that's ever been said by anybody in the NFL. Just, it came out of nowhere. And he's right.
It came out of nowhere, but guess what? Like every quarterback in the NFL, that especially the ones that are struggling in the NFL, have all felt the same way. Like they go back to pass and like, here they come because my line isn't very good or their line is great. The speed of the game is going like this. It's going 1,000 miles an hour. For Brady, the game went about 5 to 10 miles an hour. For Manning, the game went 5 to 10 miles an hour. It's and then there are others that are in mediocre situations where, even though they know where they're supposed to do, where they're supposed to go, and the long list of great things that they can do, these guys are coming at them at a speed that they're not used to. And their line is not good enough to hold them back. And they can't do, the mind knows what it wants to do. The body can't do it because it's going too fast.
Mm-hmm. It's a fear.
It's not a fear. It's just like, oh, geez, here they come. And so now you're no longer as calm back there. You feel like you have to get rid of it faster than you want to, right? Or you're used to. And when you finally do get time to do it, you're still thinking they're going to come at you.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a big problem for the highest of draft picks. When you are a highly drafted quarterback, you are going in all likelihood to a mediocre team.
Not often does a guy go to a team that's good.
Right? Dak Prescott was a 4th-round pick.
Mm-hmm. Jalen Hurts was a late second-rounder.
Second-round pick. Russell Wilson was a 3rd when he went to Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Well, being a 3rd-round pick, Seattle was able to, under the salary cap, they had a 3rd-round pick quarterback with 3rd-round pick money. So they were able to go out and get free agents and also re-sign their secondary because they had a 3rd-round pick quarterback. The Eagles were able to do certain things until they finally gave Jalen Hurts his contract because they were operating with a 2nd-round pick quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And guess what? They went to better teams.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the great breaks of Aaron Rodgers' career is he fell in the draft.
Yeah.
He ended up going to Green Bay, and it may have been frustrating to go as, was he 25th overall pick?
25th, 24th, something like that.
Right? It may have been probably, that night was probably awful for him because he expected to be maybe the 1st overall pick.
Mm-hmm.
Then he has to sit behind Brett Favre, and it had to take great patience to do that, but doggone, when the curtain came up, he was ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
And he had people around him. He had an offensive line around him.
Mm-hmm.
He had receivers.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a great break. I mean, David Carr's brother comes out of Fresno. Right? I go, it was David Carr. And gets picked 1st overall by Houston. He spent the vast majority of his time looking up at the ceiling of NRG Stadium, counting the lights.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody's, he was a bust. A bust? The poor guy had no time to do anything. He was with a bad football team. And by the way, he has a Super Bowl ring.
Yeah.
He does.
I mean, look at the 2017, before we wrap up, the 2017 draft, the Mahomes draft. He went 10th to the Chiefs. He sat behind Alex Smith. And then he came in.
For 15 games.
Yeah, but he sat behind him for a season.
Yep.
And then he came in, and bam, he's got a team around him. It makes life a lot easier.
Sure it does.
Like,
it's amazing. Like, these guys step in there. Like Trevor Lawrence did not. Trevor Lawrence went to Jacksonville, and they're obviously the loss to Houston was. Mm-hmm. But Trevor Lawrence, they did not have a good year first year because he didn't have a good team around him.
Mm-mm.
I still don't understand why they did what they did with the 1st overall pick, but that's, the Walker kid from
Travion Walker.
From Georgia. Okay.
Or Trayvon Walker.
Yeah. I'm like, I don't get that. I'm confused.
I think they are probably confused as well.
I was confused on draft, and I said, this makes no sense.
Yeah. I mean, they had, right behind him was Aiden Hutchinson.
Yeah, that's who I thought they were going to pick.
Or they could have even gone with a defensive back. They could have taken, I don't know, Sauce Gardner, Derek Stingley.
Yeah, but I thought they were going to take Hutchinson.
Everyone did. I think I may have bet on that with friends. Was like, oh, it's going to happen. No one thought Trayvon Walker was going to jump up to 1. He did. So it happens.
Yeah, there's a lot of things in the draft that happen where you sit back and go, I'm over here in the back, a bit confused. What are you doing here?
Yeah. There's a lot of things, but we'll discuss those other days here on the Steve Jones Sports Talk with Steve Jones, might I say. A 7 Mountains Media production. Check back daily for all the latest sports news analysis. The voice of Penn State football and men's basketball, Mr. Steve Jones.